Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to today's IEEE-USA webinar, Transitioning from Expert to Leader in the AI and BANI Era. I'm your host, Jonathan Cho. Our presenter for today is Caroline Stokes. Caroline is an award-winning executive coach, systems thinker, and author of Elephants Before Unicorns. With a background spanning corporate leadership in Europe and global coaching practice, Caroline specializes in helping leaders adapt to volatile, AI-disrupted environments. She's a PCC-level certified executive coach and has completed executive education in AI for business strategy and ESG from MIT. Her work integrates emotional intelligence, leadership development, and human-centered AI to help organizations and individuals navigate the complex terrain of Jamais Cascio's BANI era, or Brittle, Anxious, Nonlinear, and Incomprehensible. Caroline has been published in Harvard Business Review, Fast Company, VentureBeat, and Entrepreneur, and is a frequent keynote speaker on the future of leadership, organizational transformation, and ethical AI adaptation. She's recognized by Marshall Goldsmiths and Thinkers 50 as a leading global coach in 2019. She currently works with emerging and established leaders across sectors including tech, engineering, academia, and government to help them shift from subject matter expertise to systemic strategic leadership. Without further ado, I will now pass off to our guest. Welcome, Caroline. We're very excited for what you have in store for our audience today.
Thank you so much, Jonathan. Thank you for the very warm and thorough welcome. I very much appreciate it. And just so you know, everybody, you just saw the ad for the cruise, and I was actually on the cruise to Alaska last year, where I opened up the cruise, specifically talking to the participants and to coach and actually coach them throughout the entire journey. So it was an absolute honor to do that, and I'm pretty sure that if you join that particular cruise that's coming up for this October and November, you're going to have an absolutely fantastic time and learn something along the way while having an awful lot of fun. So without further ado, it's an absolute pleasure to be here, to be focusing on how to transition from expert to leader and in the AI and BANI era. The Pope Francis, we obviously know that he passed this year, which was obviously very sad, but he left a legacy where he said in his book that came out in 2020, we are not in an era of change, we are in a change of era. And I don't think people quite understood just how profound that was. Obviously, it was at a time when we were just coming out of the pandemic, or we were in the middle of the pandemic, where we obviously had to deal with a lot of volatility and change and disruption during that time. But it was really quite profound for him to be able to say that. And I think when you get to that age and you've seen so much change, you're able to. So we're going to be talking about transitioning from expert to leader. Now, really, this is a case of going, well, how can engineers rethink leadership in a post-expert world? And talking about a post-expert world may be a bit of a slap in the face. I know that I feel that for much of my career, I've had 3 different careers over my lifetime. And in each stage, I've always wanted to focus on how can I become the expert at this so I am able to lead forward. And the issue is that with the AI era that we're in, it's a lot harder to be the expert right now. I'm going to be able to talk about this over the next 19 slides. I'm going to warn you, we're going to be going on quite the journey. We're going to be going into lots of different areas, and I'm hoping that the slides will be shared with you at the end of this. So if I do go at a pace, I apologize. We're going to be going through an awful lot, and I'll be around, obviously, at the end for the last 15 minutes for a Q&A. So to move on, what is a post-expert world? This is a world where knowledge is everywhere, but trust is rare. I'm pretty sure that you're able to feel that, sense it, and cognitively understand that without any doubt. AI can match or exceed human expertise like that. You just have to provide the right prompt. You just have to have the right LLMs and the right way of executing it. And it goes beyond traditional automation, which is what we experienced a decade ago. Success isn't defined defined by what you know, but how you lead the systems, how you adapt under pressure and create meaning to obtain results. And this isn't about obsolescence. A lot of people will say AI is taking my job. Yes, in some instances that is correct, unfortunately. But really, for an engineer, engineers are so important to our evolution and our stability, that really for engineers to be able to adapt and evolve right now, it's about up-leveling your emotional intelligence. We're going to talk about that a little bit later on, because I know that can actually be quite insulting or can feel insulting. Relational fluency with radical listening and adaptive presence. So you may think to yourself, hold on a second, Caroline, that's a really tall order. I went to, I got my master's, I got my ring, and I got my PhD. And what are you talking about? Why do I need to do this? I'm good at what I do. Isn't that enough? And I've been there so many times. Isn't me being good enough? And too often, especially now, it's not that easy to answer, but we're going to give this a really good try. So there is a context shift right now, and I've just noticed a spelling mistake. You can spot the spelling mistakes in Caroline's deck today. So careers are now like snakes and ladders. Organizations, as we know too clearly, are restructuring faster than humans can adapt. If you read Alvin Toffler's book from 1970, Future Shock, you're going to hear, and if you listen to the audiobook or if you need to read it, it's so familiar to what we're experiencing right now. The future shock, the culture shock of it all, that is what we're experiencing, but at such a pace, it's like an earthquake within us. Expertise alone is no longer guaranteed, or guarantees trust or influences change. If you read Peter Senjay's book, his book that came out in 1990, I should say, is a prediction for the systems level thinking that we require today. And I state in my new book that comes out later this year, I don't want to go on to that. That's not what I'm going to be talking about today. Leadership requires people to adapt and context switch, which we are going to talk about, from individual contributor or expert to systems aware leader. So the emotional consequences are pretty significant. You're probably feeling a whole bunch of things. Our emotions are going to be quite complicated and complex. You might actually feel apathy right now, which is, oh, I don't care, we're doomed anyway, or, oh, there's no point, nothing can ever change. That's an emotional consequence of what we're experiencing. Frustration could be, why am I not being listened to when I know the answer? That might be something that you think about during the day. Pessimism and burnout, where you're carrying executional load with no strategic say. Isolation and confusion, where one might be underestimated or misunderstood in cross-functional rooms. So there can be a lot of dread, or a lot of given upness, which is, what is the point? There's a lot of people that also feel that way. It's also part of the burnout lens, which can make us which when you walk into a room and you're trying to create change in the world or your team's world, that energy really does come through quite significantly. And I just want to reflect back to 2019, before the pandemic. I was very fortunate to be invited by IEEE-USA to speak at the conference in Pittsburgh, where I spoke specifically about emotional contagion, and from a leadership perspective, how one's own emotional how one's emotion is actually is able to be contagious towards a team. At that time, I was expressing that when you walk into an office, when you walk into a meeting, these days we may not necessarily be walking into an office or a meeting, because the majority of things might be happening online. So it's something to think about. And then the influential aspects of leadership transition is that people follow those who create psychological safety. The person that coined that phrase, you can do a deep dive on her work, Amy Edmondson. She's done with Harvard. She's done incredible work, just like Brené Brown has done incredible work about vulnerability. She is the person to really get a good understanding about what psychological safety is, or what it means, and how to create it, and some of the misunderstandings and misinterpretations that people can have with regards to that. And then influence grows through presence, and it's not just through performance. And then there's obviously emotional and relational intelligence, which is incredibly important. We're going to be talking about that a little bit more, because that relational intelligence is going to be what enables you to get to that next position. So if you haven't heard of BANI, we're going to be talking about that in a second. But before BANI, there was VUCA, which you may have heard of because it's a system that was really prevalent in management circles for a number of decades. And what I like to be able to say here is that all systems are interconnected. They're all, which is actually something that is spoken about in BANI, which is where our external system, we could probably whiteboard just all of the different external systems that you experience with work at home, and obviously in governance and geopolitical and from an environmental perspective. But here we're going to be talking about VUCA just very briefly, which is where we were. And I would argue a lot of people would still feel that we're here emotionally, which is why people feel stuck. That's my TLDR there. So the acronym origin is that in the post-Cold War era, it was first introduced by the US Army War College in 1987, and it became mainstream in corporate and organizational circles in the 2000s. VUCA stands for volatile, uncertain, I'm sure you can read the rest, complex and ambiguous. And at that time it was fine, because we knew at that time, back in the 80s and 90s, that we were focusing on globalization. There was a lot of growth there. It was actually a very, very exciting time. Berlin Wall was coming down, lots of fantastic progress was being made, and it felt like the sky was the limit. I remember in the 80s living in England and experiencing my first McDonald's. That is the kind of level of transition and change that happened, which, if you look at Alvin Toffler's book from 1970, Future Shock, is still, that was the scale of change and pace that was actually happening. So then, if you look at how that limits leaders, at that time, it framed leaders as rational actors in a very volatile environment, and that was fine, versus participants of the kind of environment that we're in today. It also it assumed that challenges at that time were relatively knowable. And guess what? I'm not saying guess what, I shouldn't say guess what. We know life was a lot simpler then compared to now. And it doesn't account for the emotional chaos that we're actually experiencing today. So today, VUCA, it isn't really, I hate to say it, but it's a thing of the past. Our leadership antennae and sense making is certainly changing, and it isn't a case now of we can make quarterly adjustments. We're having to make adjustments in real time, and it is absolutely exhausting. So BANI, where are we now? The acronym origin of BANI, Brittle, Anxious, Nonlinear, and Incomprehensible, thank you, Jonathan, for stating that at the beginning, was coined by Jamais Cascio in 2020 in a Medium post of all places, so yay to Medium. And it reflects the psychological volatility of the 21st century and the human fragility that it really impacts how we're able to deal with all of these externalities in tech, in climate, post-pandemic, geopolitical and societal systems. The real life BANI for engineers, because I want to make this as applicable to you as possible, this is not rocket surgery for you, which is that because you live it every single day, which is that a minor bug or a cyber attack will cause a massive system-wide pain. And the ripple effect is just absolutely profound. And the stress associated with that is just beyond compare. Or, we might read something in the media that this happened, and I just know from having worked with enough engineers in my career just how much of a burden and overwhelm it is for those people that have to find those solutions, and then obviously scale them up to a government, and then create all of the standards to ensure that it doesn't happen again. Only for maybe something to fall along the wayside. It's a very challenging time. There's always the pressure to deliver under these shifting specs, especially when regulations and compliances are changing all the time, and that impacts a business performance. So there's this cycle of pressure that continues to happen. and that teams and decision making is going to be frozen. I mean, from an emotional perspective, it is very hard. BANI makes emotional, relational, and aftershock systems, pretty difficult to negotiate. So let's go back to the expert to leader based on this particular situation. That the reason why you're here is like, how do you evolve from expert to leader? And it's a case of looking at our internal systems, our mind, our polyvagal system, our emotional response, triggers to everything that shifts at pace and at scale, and then how that impacts our professional self, how it impacts the organization, and then our external success. It's so many different dances that we have to deal with, and it would be so comforting if we could just be the expert, but the reality is we need to adapt and evolve. So why bother? Well, the real choice is that with the old model, we had an official promotion, and that's when we experienced prestige, money, position, title, power, hierarchy, and a team reporting to you. It was so simple back in those VUCA days. I mean, we really didn't realize how simple we had it. And now leadership is a behavioral first in polycrisis. It requires us working pretty much inside here and inside here to be able to communicate really effectively from a relational perspective. But also the expert path is narrowing, as we know, especially if you're an AI super user. AI is automating deep tasks, identifying trends, gaps, and opportunities faster than humans are actually able to upskill. It's absolutely phenomenal. I use AI when I'm coaching people, and what would have taken them a year or two to get or to evolve or to see those systems in practice, we're reducing that learning time from years to months, and then sometimes from months to weeks. And then it really is a case of being able to create that from a sustainable perspective, because otherwise, it's like anything, it will burn out. Your boss also expects you to develop your emotional intelligence. Now, I'm never a fan of the phrase emotional intelligence, even though my first book is about it. Why? Because it feels like it's insulting, when really it's a case of being able to ground ourselves from an internal perspective, where we don't make rash decisions, we don't panic, we don't freak out. For example, I'll give you an example. These slides weren't working because my technology wasn't working, so I didn't have everything come down at once. So I just said to Jonathan 4 minutes before showtime, let's just have it like this, we're going to be fine with it. So being able to ground oneself, it in those moments of things not going according to plan, so decisions can be made and the show can go on, is obviously important, through to the relational, the contextual and the systems intelligence that's necessary. So having those 4 overlapping areas is just super important, and it's a lifelong game. And at the end of this presentation, I give you the hack on how to do this. So as an engineer, you're creating huge, phenomenally important solutions across industry standards and governance, and that requires this level of up-leveling. And the future you, from a career protection perspective, is going to be really important for your strategic visibility and influence. So the areas to evolve is technical problem solving to sense making, isolated contribution to relational influence, from execution excellence to systems thinking and awareness, from intellectual control to emotional. And there's all of those different aspects that can be included. And again, the TLDR is, AI is your friend to be able to solve this. And I have the basic hack at the end. So the future-proofing argument is really important. I want every smart engineer, I've been working with engineers for over 30 years, in all sorts of different areas. And engineers are my favorite brain, for the simple reason that they solve problems. They want to make society better. They want to make human systems better to essentially reduce suffering. So I'm a huge fan of IEEE, and that's why I am more than happy to support, to be here and to support everybody. But future-proofing yourself for the future is also very important. You've got families, you've got loved ones, to be able to evolve and to ensure that you're able to grow and also be successful. So what do leaders actually gain from future-proofing yourself? More control over what work gets done and why. I'm pretty sure that's important because it means you're able to, steer the course in the right direction through that emotional and relational and systems development. More respect and influence in the room goes without saying. Being able to be the person where you are heard in the room is going to be fundamentally important. More stability in chaotic organization shifts, which happen all the time. It used to happen once a year where there would be the layoffs or the performance then layoffs, or growth, whichever cycle happens, depending on the organization, how they're investing in technology and how they're investing in the future, and whether or not they're in growth or let's call it degrowth mode. So feeling stable in that time already with all of these different challenges is going to be incredibly important. And then the ability to design your own role in the system is obviously of paramount importance, to be able to see around corners and see through walls. So all of that all overlaps. And so, the argument is, isn't competence enough? No. I'll think about my son's neurosurgeon. The first time I met him, my son was 10 days old, and he had phenomenal, as they would call it back in 2007, fantastic bedside manner. And he basically was able to, he could probably sense that we were, stressing out that our son was going to die. But not only was he a phenomenal neurosurgeon that was able to identify a very rare disorder, he was able to perform neurosurgery on a 10-day-old child and put a VP shunt into him. So he was able to calm my nervous system down and make the right decisions on behalf of my newborn child. So this is why I believe competence isn't enough. So, but fortunately, it isn't just about my own expertise here. McKinsey's and Deloitte also have exactly the same perspective. If you look at the two links at the bottom, you're not going to be able to link them, but McKinsey.com, had a what matters most 8 CEO priorities for 2025, and Deloitte also had a human capital trends for 2020 to 25. So I've included the TLDR on this, which is leadership success now depends on emotional intelligence, not just technical skills. Since I became an EQ qualified or certified person some years ago, we always knew that. But the issue is that we now need it even more than ever. The World Economic Forum also said the same thing. We now need this more than ever, which means that we need to be able to stabilize our stressors, and to be able to make those decisions in a very calculated way for the best possible outcomes. But only 23% of organizations believe another spelling mistake, I apologize, leaders are equipped for today's disruption. To only hear 23% actually scared me, because we obviously want people in these organizations to have the best leadership to be able to move their organizations forward. Imagine what your team are feeling if they're erring on the side of the 23%. Where is that confidence? How can you step up? I mean, I can't see you. I don't know who you are and your experience. I can't speak to you and your experience directly, but there is going to be this giant gap right now to be able to move us forward for the foreseeable future. And it requires individuals to lead through systems, not just optimize them. It requires people to evolve their competency levels to solve problems, and leadership that builds context, coherence, and capacity. And coherence is all about the different systems that I just talked about earlier. And the future relevance depends on emotional, strategic, and systemic fluency. So if an individual contributor or expert competence solves problems, then leadership builds context, coherence, and capacity. And being able to, I believe that still being an engineer is going to be of paramount importance. You need to be the expert in the room to be able to have that, to be able to make sense of that, of everything that is happening. I think that is the nucleus of your role as an engineer. However, the additional layer of leadership is going to be of paramount importance. So I invite you to develop a new mindset. Now, while no one can control chaos, for starters, or can anyone think as fast as an AI system? So what's needed? My argument and my proposal and my invitation is that we become a catalyst citizen. And I remember when I wrote this in my book, my editor said, surely that's just a leader. And it's like, well, it is, but you've got to think from a mindset perspective. What are those two avatars? What are those two roles that need to be present? So a catalyst citizen mindset leader that can work with AI tools while they're encouraged to develop a leadership mindset that can think, sense, predict, prepare within ecological, technological, societal contexts across the relational and organizational systems. That's a lot. That's a lot. So the leap to leader, I am pretty certain you are each able to, you're straddling very well in various aspects, of course, but as with anybody, we need to evolve, and it's a case of finding out where that might be, and I provide a hack for that later. So what is a catalyst citizen? So I present this in very basic TLDR, which is a catalyst is a pattern seer, disruption igniter for creating better outcomes for society. As an engineer, you create solutions for society, whether or not you're building a bridge or you're building a dam or you're creating the right systems for cybersecurity or mobile communication, or for people to communicate or to get from A to B in a much better way for the growing population. Drives change through insight and disruption, uses pattern recognition, provocation, and bold questioning. So a citizen, in comparison, is the integrity holder, the trust builder, stabilizes culture through trust and belonging, and practices grounded ethics, care, and co-regulation. And co-regulation is very important. It's not being, I'll say what it's not, because I think we'll all understand what the not is, which is the not is to maybe be aggressive, to be abrasive, or to expect things to happen in a particular way. It's to co-regulate and see that probably there are other people that are stressed as well, and to be able to help them on side with the solutions that need to happen. So when integrated, permission, you need to give yourself permission to move fluidly between those two states, which is, again, a really hard ask. It requires that level of mental sovereignty to be able to do that, and to be able to consciously move from one to the other at any time. And that takes an incredible amount of cognitive work. And it will help engineers shift from reactive expert to relational systems leader. And it combines the two archetypes for the BANI ready leadership that is needed for our time, which will create or build on credibility, psychological safety, and lead teams through complexity. So the TLDR is, in an incomprehensible world, intelligence isn't enough. Radical listening and presence is power. So here's the how, and I've only got a few slides left, and I'm looking forward to receiving lots of questions and any coaching opportunities if that's what you want to be able to ask. If you want to do it anonymously, even better, because I'm sure that there are other people that will want to talk about this. So if you are doing this already, what I'm about to suggest, great. If you want to take it up a notch, or you're doing this for the first time, or you're concerned that you're being a cheat, don't worry about it. Just wherever you are on the let's say the AI super user that OpenAI coined quite recently, this is your opportunity. So Bryce Shelamel in Moderna back in January he was on a podcast. It was a fantastic podcast because he talked about what he called a 5-person team that he uses with AI. So every single person in his AI team becomes a 5-person team by using AI. So you have an opportunity to be able to use, let's say ChatGPT, if ChatGPT is your favorite, or Grok. I use both of those. You choose your favorite to become your 5-person team. It may be internal systems, it may be external systems. And here you're able to create your own EQ, which is emotional quotient, EI, and systems thought partner and co-pilot to be able to help you understand where you are right now and where you can go. So here you're able to understand your gaps, your next steps of your development towards organizational OKRs and your KPIs. So when I first came up with this idea, when I was at MIT doing MIT's course back in 2023, I want to say 2023, I had created, at that time, it was before agentic AI had even been coined, and I had created a system within the MIT framework that the person that had assessed my work said, "Oh my gosh, that is so disruptive." And I didn't have 20 million or to be able to put behind it, but still that was the concept, which was to put OKRs, KPIs, own KPIs, team KPIs all into one particular system, and then have it integrated and to be able to assess what's happening with all of the external aspects within the world, to be able to understand what it is that needs to happen next. The best person, love him or hate him, that did this exceptionally well, again, love him or hate him, Elon Musk did this for Doge when he first sent that email out in February, along the lines of asking all government workers to explain what they were doing by Monday, and everybody was understandably threatened by that. He was not exactly using the best emotional intelligence terms, because he was in a fight mode, if we look at it from an emotional intelligence lens or a polyvagal lens, because he was trying to do whatever he needed to do. And no, I'm not defending Elon Musk if you think I am. I'm just explaining it from what I could see from a critic's perspective on the outside looking in, from a goldfish bowl perspective. And I could see all he wanted to do was to get all of that data, probably put it into Grok. As it happens, I think just late last week it was confirmed how he used that data, and I wasn't too far wrong. Again, it wasn't rocket science for us to be able to see. Well, he was gathering that data, but the media and everybody just were up in uproar, because AI has a really bad reputation. To people don't have that much respect in it. A lot of eye rolling, when actually you're able to get a lot of data if you ask the right prompts. So I really recognize that you're able to put all of these, as much information as possible, into a system that you either create yourself, you have within your organization, or you have your own bespoke system that can understand exactly what your background is, and will communicate with you in an effective manner to be able to create the right outcomes. But here's the thing, it requires radical listening, and in a way, that's what Elon Musk was trying to do back then, when he had sent that email disrupting and upsetting everyone. He wanted to get all of that data to be able to understand where are the risks, where's the gaps, what are people working on, how can we evolve? But he didn't position it in that way, like a leader would do. And Elon Musk can do what Elon Musk can do, but as engineers in your area, where you need to influence people to create the right possible outcomes at a pace that people can handle, that level of change, it's going to be quite fundamental to be able to do that. So the radical listening requires you to being able to understand what your stakeholders need. Your stakeholders are anybody that's in your environment. They're your co-workers, your colleagues, your suppliers. What is it that they need? And it isn't a case of asking the question, what do you need? You're asking them, what keeps you up at night? What challenges are you experiencing? What is in the way for you to be able to deliver? What do you expect to see in the future? What threats do you see coming down the line? And so on. And then you're able to see what don't they see yet, especially once you are able to collate all of this data. And I'm assuming you're halfway there. You're already doing this to some degree, or this is like, Caroline, you're speaking in kindergarten terms. We're way ahead of you. But the interesting thing here is how you do it, how you go about it, and how you demonstrate that you are listening. Because obviously when Elon Musk did it in his way, it created a lot of enemies. A lot of people didn't respect how he went about it. And when you and I are not billionaires, and therefore we want to focus on future credibility and protecting our future. So how we do things to be able to listen and so you can influence change is going to be of paramount importance. Alrighty, so as I was researching for this presentation, I really wanted to understand, and I kind of knew this, but I wanted to understand what is it that IEEE does, and how is it that I feel my work aligns, and what this presentation was to do or webinar was to do, and how it aligns. And I felt that engineering and leadership isn't a job title, it's how you protect your purpose, which is to improve society and lives. So the questions to ask yourself over this next while being, you know, today, tomorrow, maybe in a month's time, which is how might you be over identifying as an expert? I want to encourage you not to lose the expert. There's a lot of people that when they have this kind of conversation with me, or they go to leadership school, or they go to MIT, or they go to Harvard, wherever they might go, Stanford, to obtain a leadership qualification or a coaching qualification, they'll be told, you're no longer the expert here, you need to listen. And that can be very triggering for people who, you know, have built their career on that particular aspect. And nobody is asking you to give that up. It's being able to adopt various avatars, or in coaching school they say wear lots of different hats, you know, or a different role. One minute you're a father or a mother, the next you're a brother or a sister, or you're a parent, or you know, a grandchild, or whatever the situation is. We play lots of different roles at any one time. So it's going to be curious for you to see and understand how might you be over identifying as an expert, and how can you evolve. It's to have that level of curiosity. And then how can you radically listen and see the signals above the noise? Because there's so much noise, as we know. I've taken to removing as much noise as possible so I can hyper focus. For example, I've been hyper focusing on my book for some time now, and it means being very selective about what data and curating the data that I am exposed to, so I'm not overwhelmed, and I'm not distracted on my personal mission, which is to support people in this particular time where people are feeling very fragile and vulnerable and want to be able to find their way through it. One of the key things that I really recommend is to do a 360. If you've done 360 and you've had a performance review, great. Pop that into your AI, upload it, shove it in there, and ask ChatGPT, you know, how might I develop myself as a leader or a citizen catalyst mindset? What behaviors do I need to adjust? And then, you know, what aftershock, because we're in a state of aftershock right now, archetype do I need to improve? Is it catalyst? Is citizen? Is it more catalyst? Is it more citizen? How do I need to move when I walk into a meeting? Do I need to listen? Do I need to champion something? It's having that mindset, and you're able to then get different results out of it. And then I also recommend asking yourself, where do you want to be in 365 days? And why do I ask that? Why 365 days? Somebody that I know who's absolutely fantastic on a completely different topic. I've known him for quite a number of years, and he is a very well-known person. I don't want to mention his name, but he said to me, Caroline, how did you get so fit recently? And I said, well, I just wasn't prepared to be the person that the same person today as for next year in 365 days time. So I made that change. I made that mental model in my mind that I had to change, and I had to change my life around it. So the point is, that's a completely off-topic example, but it's to give you context, which is when you identify that you're not comfortable being where you are anymore and you want something different, that's a pretty powerful and provocative way to actually move yourself forward. So I recommend that you think to yourself, what do I want to be? What do I not want to be anymore? What does that look like? And it's going to be in presence. So for me, I wanted to make sure that I lost 44 pounds in weight, and I lost them. and I wanted to get stronger. So I hired a personal coach, a fitness trainer, and that kind of thing. So that was what I wanted to do. And then how do I want to do that with my team? Well, guess what? When I did that, I was then more present with people, because I had more energy, I was able to think more, I was able to strategize more. And by then I was able to influence a position. So everybody's going to have their own unique, let's call it, catalyst to citizen journey. I just encourage you to sit in, when you're having a bath, having a shower, going for a walk, whatever it is, noodle with that. See what pops up in your mind, when you're least expecting it, rather than maybe putting yourself under pressure to try and have a plan for it immediately. And then once you've done that, see what your goals might be in 100 days. 100 days is not long, but it's also a very long time. I usually break my life down in 100-day clumps, depending on what my objectives are, and rarely do they all happen at the same time. But I would encourage you to think about what your goal might be. It may be personal, it may be professional, it may be team related, it may be career related, it may be new product, new concept, new innovation, maybe anything. Just see how your life evolves around that. And then how might you use AI to journal and evolve from expert to leader mindset and the behaviors in real time. I asked ChatGPT how often, when I was going through my exponential growth phase, how often I was using it, to analyze how often I had used it for my evolution with some of the things that I needed to change from a cognitive and an emotional perspective. And it said 17 times a day until it just became common. So I commend that kind of free tool to be able to use that. If you can afford the $500 it is for Grok annually, or OpenAI, I think it's $20 for ChatGPT 4. I recommend that as well. And I actually like using both, because I get different attitudes depending on what my avatar is in each one, which is actually really quite fun. Okay, and here ends the presentation. We're now into Q&A, but just so you know, my book comes out, Aftershock to 2030, A CEO's Guide to Reinvention in the Age of AI, Climate and Societal Collapse. It comes out in a couple of months. My publisher, Broad Book Press, just put the book on their website today. Sorry, can you see my face? It's just so excited that it has happened. So that is there. If you want to follow me on LinkedIn, please just connect with me on LinkedIn. It's linkedin.com, Caroline Stokes, and I'm on X at Caroline Stokes. I don't have Blue Sky. I do have Blue Sky, but I'm choosing not to communicate on Blue Sky because I don't need another social media channel. So thank you very much for your time, and I do wish you all the very best, and I look forward to your questions.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Caroline. Folks, so I'm just getting ready to post the link to Caroline's book in the comment section. But so we are now at the Q&A portion of the webinar. Please post your questions in the comment section, and we'll load them onto the stream for Caroline to answer. Caroline, we did get a few questions during the presentation.
Oh, thank you.
Let's go ahead and highlight those now. The first question we received from audience member: how can we avoid becoming spread too thin as we gain broad expertise? And is it better to focus on deep innovation or on skillfully applying existing AI tools for greater impact on career growth?
Whoa! Could you put that question in the chat so I could see that? Because there are many layers to that, and I want to make sure that I'm responding very carefully, because this is a very complicated question and it requires a very thoughtful answer. Thank you. Okay, so Shankar, I hope that's your first name. So Shankar, thank you very much. How can we avoid becoming spread too thin as they gain broad expertise? And is it better to focus on deep innovation or to skillfully applying existing AI tools? Okay, great question. Okay, so this is where the active radical listening is going to be really important, because understanding what the issue is right now is going to be really important, because you're 100% right. It would be very easy to do a scattergun approach to look at all of the different things that are happening and to feel that one needs to be involved in all of those different areas. Whereas instead, what you could do is assume that, I'm assuming you have a team, anywhere between 3 people to 10 people, or maybe more. And if it isn't, so I'm going to answer this as if you're an IC and it's just you that's doing it, or that you've got a team. So I'm going to answer in 2 different ways. So if you're an IC, AI is absolutely going to be your best friend. And what I think you need to be able to do is to understand what the key aspects are for you at this time. And that requires understanding, let's say, from all of your stakeholders, what their challenges are, agreeing with them what the priorities are. And, you know, spoiler alert, those priorities might change week by week, they might change hour by hour, but to get some idea and to feel stable in that moment is going to be of paramount importance. But it requires the listening, the radical listening, maybe by doing what I call a listening tour. And a listening tour would mean having conversations with maybe 5 or 10 stakeholders, anyone that is absolutely mission critical in delivering, or anyone that is mission critical in actually approving a particular aspect. The more they can understand that you are listening, the more the less resistance you're going to have. And that isn't a covert, you know, dark empath move. That is a move that will enable people to understand, especially if you're having a deep conversation with them, that they understand your challenges, that and vice versa, and that together you are able to co-create what the issue is that needs to be solved and those next steps. So that's the kind of dance, that's the tango that needs to be played or danced at that particular moment. And from there, you're able to map it out. But this is a great question. And once you have that data, you can then, you know, play with ChatGPT or whichever your preferred GPT is, to be able to help you solve this, so you're not doing all of the thinking yourself. You're not making all of this, you know, because that's a lot of cognitive energy. So that's what I would recommend.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. And Shankar, thank you for your great question. This next question from audience member Raj. Raj asks, is working with futurists at companies and with collaborative environment help in transition from expert to leader?
Definitely. Yes, because it's, what I'm noticing here, and this is really smart, is I'm noticing I'm almost having the same answer. And it requires, and you're probably going to think, Caroline, is that the only tool you have? And it's like, well, if this is the evolution from expert to leader, it requires radical listening. It requires understanding. So is working with futuristic companies and with a collaborative environment help in the transition from expert to leader? Absolutely. Or even if you're not working with futurists, anyone that is trying to, I'm going to sound a bit dramatic, survive right now, they've got to listen and understand what people's problems are, what solutions they're trying to create, what needs to happen. And it isn't a case of just listening to people that are complaining. It's trying to understand what is the root issue, what is the root cause, what is the root goal that everybody is trying to collectively deliver. The challenge, I think, that I'm going off topic ever so slightly, but from going from expert to leader, we will be grieving something that is lost. So we're going to be losing something, which is when we're an expert, we may be so, I'm trying to look for an example. Here's a pen, okay? Let's say I'm an engineer and I created this pen, and the way that this was done was just was absolute genius. But we've just realized that we have to give up this design and design something a little bit that is going to be different, because there's going to be air freight price change, that we're going to be using different material that isn't going to leach in the environment. Maybe it's going to use less petroleum, and all of these different things. So it's like, well, we're going to be grieving, and I have this in my book actually, which is we have to do a mea culpa, which is to apologize for what we have done and then apologize again for what we were about to do, because we are going to be changing things pretty dramatically, and to allow ourselves to go, you know what, we've made that change, we've changed what we're having to make this change. How can we let go of that potential anxiety, the grief, the sadness that we're letting something good go, because we're going to be creating something that much better. And so the resistance that in a collaborative environment that an expert or a leader might notice is that people are going to be so attached to the older styles of working, older methodologies, older materials, older ways, without realizing we're now in this new era where we have to move that much faster, better, more agile, and so on, to make that work. So working with futurists is great. I mean, at the end of the day, when you're dealing with a futurist, I mean, anybody could call themselves a futurist, but I think somebody that is able to think in a collaborative and a forward oriented, problem solving mindset, they're the futurists.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Caroline. And thank you, Raj, for your question.
Thanks, Raj.
This next question, Pedro asks a very interesting question. If you were an undergraduate student studying electrical engineering today, how would you make the most out of AI tools to support your learning and skill development?
Oh, what a great question. Well, I'm pretty sure that an undergraduate student, Pedro, I don't know if you're at school right now or if you're imagining if you're interviewing people. An undergraduate student, especially if they're Gen Z and late millennials, they're using it already. And they are going to be looking at different models. They're going to want to improve systems. They're going to want to identify, different routes. They're probably going to be able to do their they're just going to move at light speed. Now, as you probably know, Grok is fantastic at doing the mathematical programming stuff. I believe it's better than ChatGPT. However, there are people that I know that use OpenAI for programming who think it's better. So, the jury's always going to be out. Everything is going to be evolving. But I would imagine that anybody that's doing an electrical engineering master's right now are going to be in a situation where they're using all of the tools available to them. And what's going to be interesting is whether or not the university is keeping up with them. And then the next question is, how is the student really demonstrating that they have, and this would be a question for the interviewer if they're bringing them on board, or how they're going to be integrating their knowledge into the workplace. How is their master's? How are they absorbing the knowledge into a practical way that is going to be useful, so it isn't just for just for passing exams?
Thanks for the great question, Pedro. Caroline, so our audience member Bao asks, I've already seen many using AI to help masquerade as experts and leaders in AI. Do you see a way to rise above that now louder noise?
I've seen many using AI to masquerade as experts and leaders in AI. Do you see a way to rise about that now louder noise? Yeah, I kind of switch off it, because for me, I just go about and be curious, and I'll read MIT stuff. Anybody that has written a book about, so for example, Hamilton Mann, for example, great book on artificial integrity, for example, and I actually introduced him to a Vanguard University Creating Healthy Organizations event a couple of weeks ago. He's the real deal. You can tell who the real deal is, because he teaches at INSEAD, for example, what have you. So that you can tell who are the real deals. And who, by the way, he's light years away from what I'm capable of, because he's been eating, sleeping, doing it. I've only been writing about it since 2016, and really it's from a this is where I think the world is going. I can just see patterns and I could see systems. I then wrote about it in my book Elephants Before Unicorns 2019, and then I did a TEDx talk saying we all need to understand the AI. We need to get involved. We need to do it very early on. So I think it's in terms of the masquerading as experts and leaders in AI, we're all learning. I mean, unless people have been doing it at Google or OpenAI or, you know, Elon Musk's people, and they've been doing it since 2016, 2015 or whenever, you know, we're all in learning mode. And I don't think we're going to be in a, the majority are AI curious. And then you've got people masquerading just like they would, and I don't want to use the term masquerading, I should use the term as they're learning to make sense of it, to help others make sense of it, I think to some degree. And then I think you're just going to have all of these different avatars of people in the AI world, and you've got to gravitate to the ones that are going to teach you the most. I think that's how you rise about the now louder than noise.
Fantastic. Thank you for the great question, Bao. This next question, interesting question as well. Our audience member asks, will there be a danger of ethical AI versus unethical AI? May eliminate us. I hope that's not literal, but I can probably see what the concern might be.
Okay, so yeah, it's a difficult one, isn't it? We've all seen we've all got the doomsday in our mind, and I'm hoping that, oh gosh, this is a really difficult question, because I'm going to sound like I'm future-scaping too much and maybe being a bit dystopian, and you know, trying to balance between a dystopian perspective and a utopian perspective, and is there an in-between? There are so many parties that are far more powerful than most of us on this webinar that have the power to control what is happening. So I think there's always dangers. I was interviewed for an article in Fast Company about when ChatGPT first came out, and my concern then was the dark actors that could be playing in that. And then, you know, 10 months later, there were the various acts in the US and Europe that came about to ensure that there were guardrails in place. And now we're in there's a global race to ensure that an AI race, and I don't see behind the scenes on what that looks like. But you know, clearly it's going to be pretty aggressive. I don't know. I think there's always a danger. There's always been a danger. If you have ever read Underground Empire, book about the global financial system, it's very clear, you know, what the underground empire is capable of doing, and where AI is probably running alongside that. Will it eliminate us? I don't know.
Hopefully not.
I don't know. I think we've seen enough dystopian movies to know what could happen. But I think, I don't know, I have to put my positive human head on, which is that while there is no Superman, and no cavalry is going to save us, I'm very hopeful that there will be systems in place that will preserve and evolve and preserve a good way for humans to live and exist.
For sure, and I really appreciate that insight, Caroline. I just my own small I would like to think that with how creative all these creative minds coming up with these different potential scenarios, we have a general idea of what could happen with the use of AI or such technologies, and so at least we know what we can try to avoid and find precautions or ways to avoid that. So hopefully we don't get to that point where we
let's be positive. Let's work on the positive assumption that we're all going to fix everything.
or at least we're
Right.
going to try to. So,
Totally.
first step is figuring out that a first step to solving a problem is acknowledging that exists.
There you
So,
go. Yeah.
so yeah, I mean, thank you so much. Unfortunately, we are out of time. I just want to close it off with one final question
Okay.
that I'd like to ask. So you, looking back, I mean, you've worked across continents, industries, just across so many different experiences. So my question is, what was the most challenging leadership lesson that you had to learn the hard way, would you say?
Ooh, my leadership lesson that I had to learn. Oh gosh, there are so many hard lessons. Oh boy. Oh boy. Oh boy. Okay. Well, I wasn't expecting this question, so I don't have an answer for you right now. But I'm going to try and make one up. The most challenging leadership lessons. I'm going to give two answers. The first one is going to be related to me, and the second one is going to be related to my clients. And I'm going to answer the latter first, which is my clients' most challenging leadership lessons, actually, are that they are unable to, typically, they're unable to sit in a meeting room or to manage a problem or trying to solve a problem with the same language. Everybody comes in with their own pre-existing beliefs, their own agenda, their own everything. And the challenge is that there isn't enough collaborative kind of coaching within those teams. So the most challenging leadership lesson that I think the majority of people are going to be experiencing right now is the absolute necessity for not everyone, well, for everyone to have coaching methodologies and to be transparent and to be able to communicate effectively. It requires everybody to have to be on that same page. So in my book, I have the solution, which is in the third section of my book, which comes out in a few months, which is really focusing on having AI integrated within the organization, so everybody understands what problem they're trying to solve, so they can all get to it very, very quickly. The biggest leadership lesson that I think everyone is still will be learning until we each retire, when we're 50, 60, 70, whatever it is that everybody comes in with just different agendas, and trying to get everybody on the same agenda for the right reason, to create the right outcome, is the hardest battle. And if we can all learn that lesson faster, that would be fantastic. That's for my client. For myself, my lesson, my leadership lesson is, it's probably slightly different, but I think people might relate to it, which is I didn't, from my own leadership perspective, I didn't value my own needs enough. And I'm now 53, and I've only just started learning that. So, and my needs being, what I do, how I do it, who I work with, how I work with them, how I find that commonality with the people that I work with to create the ideal outcomes. So, and that's pretty much because of all of the belief systems that I inherited, the generational systems that I inherited, previous corporate environments that I inherited, and so on and so forth. And it just takes a really long time for us to get to that point. And I do believe that a solution with AI being integrated within organizations, and to having AI as a coach within the entire organization, is going to be the answer to that in the future, because it will happen in real time. It will work at pace and at scale, which is what we need right
Love
now.
that. Thank you so much for giving us those insights. Really appreciate it.
Thank you.
So, all right, everyone. Unfortunately, we are out of time. I know we could go on and on about this, and hopefully, we have the chance to in the future as well. Caroline, thank you so much for joining us
Thank
today
you so
and for
much.
sharing your wisdom as well.
Thank
Your
you.
perspective on leading is exactly what we need in this transformative time. So, we really appreciate having you with us today.
Thank you so much. It's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you.
And thank you to our audience for tuning in and for your great questions as well. A few announcements before we close things off today. First, IEEE-USA is still receiving nominations for the 2025 IEEE-USA Awards. Every year, the IEEE-USA Awards are given to recognize professionalism, technical achievement, and literary contributions to public awareness and understanding of the engineering profession in the United States. You can find details on each award, eligibility, and the nomination process on our website. The link has been provided in the comment section below. Next up, IEEE-USA is now accepting nominations for its 2026 Board of Directors. This is your opportunity to help shape the future of IEEE-USA and make a lasting impact on the engineering profession. We invite dedicated members to step forward or nominate qualified candidates for leadership roles. The nomination deadline is August 20th. Finally, cabins are filling up quickly for IEEE-USA's cruise to the Western Caribbean this fall, with most of the suite level cabins almost sold out. For those who have joined us on our previous 2 cruises, you already know the incredible experiences and connections this event offers. For first-timers, this is your chance to create unforgettable memories, enjoy great company, and embark on a journey packed with excitement. Don't miss out. Secure a cabin today and join us for an adventure you won't forget. If you enjoyed the content presented in today's webinar, be sure to check out our extensive catalog of other presentations and publications available on demand on our website for your viewing pleasure. If you haven't yet, please be sure to like and subscribe to our social media channels. And don't forget to check back daily for updates on upcoming events. Have a great day, everyone.
AI is changing our world at a tremendous pace. We need to be prepared for these changes. We need to understand how AI is affecting our lives, our societies, and even our psychology. I believe that this is the most important work in the world right now. IEEE is bringing people together from all around the world to work on some of the world's most difficult problems. IEEE is my competitive edge.